All right, what is going on in this video? I'm going to be covering why junior golfers struggle to shoot lower scores. This is one of the things I haven't emphasized a lot lately, and so I wanted to take a video to actually sort of talk about this a little bit more because I often talk about playing Division One golf and helping junior golfers develop to play Division One golf, and a lot of my videos on tournament selection are some of the most popular ones that I do. But that said, about 90% of the work that I do with students is actually on lowering their scores. The tournament selection is really not that complicated. And nine times out of 10, the main problem that a junior golfer is experiencing is they actually need to lower their scores before a lot of that tournament stuff even becomes overly relevant. That's on to discount stuff like being ranked and the value that that has for Division One recruiting, and also clarity on where your child is at. But for the most part, scoring is where I see most players getting stuck. Typically, I see players getting stuck around 78 to 82, somewhere in that range. This will absolutely be valuable to you if your child is shooting around 90 or something like that. It's not going to be valuable for you if you got a beginner. But when I say beginner, I mean like we don't know how to grip a club and like we don't know what the numbers on the club are, stuff like that. So this is not for you if that's your case. But for the most part, if your child is they're shooting scores, they're playing tournaments and they're just kind of like they're stuck. They're putting in a lot of work, and you're kind of wondering like, hey, like why can't we shoot lower scores? Or why can't we do this more consistently? Or why are we not seeing consistent progress? This video is really going to break that stuff down. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's just start talking about the problem. So this is not intended to bash swing coaches by any means. But when we think about junior golf and we think about golf instruction, we think about swing instruction. Those are almost kind of interchangeable as far as what we expect when we think about golf instruction. And so golf instruction is essentially swing instruction, mechanics, right? And so there's a lot to golf that is not mechanics. And, oftentimes we'll have these experiences where it's just like, hey, in the lesson, it's great. We take it to the golf course, falls apart, right? Or we have these scenarios where it's like, hey, we're hitting it great on the driving range. We take it to the golf course and it falls apart. Or we're playing great on the golf course and then falls apart in tournaments, right? And the solution, most cases I see, we just got to get more lessons. Like one day we're just gonna like keep working on the swing. Like one day it's all gonna click and we're gonna shoot 65. And that's just not true. That's not something that I have really ever seen. The times where I do see players where they go and make changes to their swing and then all of a sudden it's just like boom, those are the scores. Those players already had an extremely high golf IQ. They're already very effective with the stuff they did, and it was just the last little piece that was making things really difficult for them. And they were just making do with really bad mechanics. And as soon as they got those mechanics sorted out, they're good to go. Most of the time, we do this in the reverse, though, where we don't develop the golf IQ whatsoever. We think, oh, well, if we fix the mechanics, everything's going to be great. And it's just like, that's just not the case. And so let me kind of outline a really straightforward reason why this is not the case and why your child might be struggling. So if we are looking at, let's just call it approach shots, right? Like we're trying to hit our approach shot and we're doing that on the driving range, just stripe show, right? We get to the golf course. Well, very rarely are we just going to have absolute full on, full golf swing, right? Usually we're going to have a distance that is an in-between shot for our clubs. So if we don't practice that, we're just not going to have that shot, right? So if you see your child airmailing greens or, being way short, not being able to figure out their distances, that's part of it, right? If everything they do on the driving range is just hitting full 7-irons or full 8-irons and working on their swing or feeling whatever their mechanics are, well, when we get to the golf course and we have to figure out an in-between yardage, that's already just a problem for them. Never mind if they don't have any real awareness of strategy where, hey, they see a front pin and they're like, oh, let me just like go at the number rather than considering, okay, well, what's short, what's the best miss scenario, what's left, what's right, et cetera, what's the best shot to get into this green, not just to get it close, but also just to hit the green and make sure we're at least making par. If we don't have that, we're going to go at every single pin. We're going to end up in stupid up and down situations and we're going to make double just because we made simple strategy mistakes, right? And so if the solution to that is, oh, well, my golf swing is just not good enough, oh, I got to hit closer, it just creates this loop. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been on a call with a student or with a family that's interested in working with me. And they're like, well, he just needs to, hit it closer to like 15 feet more often or 25 footers all day. And I'm just like, I know, obviously I don't say this in the call, but like, I know for a fact that that's not the problem because if that was actually the problem, we wouldn't be shooting 82. We'd be shooting like 74 or 75. The best players that I work with, that's what we're concerned about is how do we make more birdies. but they're hitting such a volume of greens and they're not making any other mistakes that we can afford to do that. Versus most of the time when your child's shooting, like they're stuck around 80, it's like odds are they three putt, they've got compound errors, they've got balls they're hitting out of bounds. Maybe they don't hit enough greens. And a lot of time you got really easy strategic changes that you can make right out the gate to drop a few shots pretty quickly. And that's 90% again of what I'm doing when I'm working with students. It's really applying the kind of framework that I'm going to walk you guys through here in a second that is really designed to get fast progress, for lack of a better term. And that's not that's not like some like gimmicky thing. Like that's out of necessity. Everything that I do, I try and talk about this. Everything that I do with my students, everything that I talk about here, it's out of some, for lack of a better term, trauma that I've had from working with students who are trying to get some particular help where we were failing in an objective and something had to be fixed, right? So, one of the things that I talk about, when I'm working with students is I have a very specific practice that I want them to do. And every single drill, every ball, every difficulty is very specific. Like it's there for a very specific reason. And I can see consistently in their scores if they're not doing what I asked them to do, because they'll just stay stuck. And I'm like, no, like this drill consistently solves that problem. Like we're not doing it. And then sure enough, they'll be like, yeah, well, I was doing it, but I was doing this other stuff too. Or I was doing this other stuff my swing coach gave me or whatever. I'm just like, okay, that's why this stuff's stuck. I was seeing it time and time and time again. And so, it's everything that I'm going to talk about here is just like, it's not just, something I made up because I think that I'm smart. It's been like chiseled. It's like, imagine like you have a marble and you're trying to like figure out like, how do I get to the base of this to make this go as smoothly as possible? It's just like, it's all been hard fought, things that I've experienced. Right. And so I've been able to validate it. I've worked with over 100 junior golfers. I've seen thousands of rounds of golf. And so everything that I've done is really informed by that stuff. It's not just me thinking I'm smart. It's more so seeing so many different scenarios, being like, okay, cool, these solve these problems consistently. And I'm always trying to refine that stuff. So when I see something that works better, I add that into the mix. I test it. If it works, great. So that's why the average player I work with improves so much faster than average is, for a number of reasons. But one of those is just I've worked with so many players and I document everything that I do. So a lot of coaches are on the driving around and you just got to go through your lesson, go do the videos, but you're not writing the stuff down and saying, okay, well, this is the last time I saw you. This are the things we talked about. These are the things we worked on, et cetera. And having the clarity of like, what do the rounds look like from a data-driven perspective? What do the practices look like from a data-driven perspective? All those other intangibles, they're just looking at whatever the swing they have in front of them is and whatever the junior golfer tells them, which, as you can imagine, is kind of unreliable, right? If you look at your child and you're like, hey, golf swing changes around a lot, then that's obviously not going to be super helpful because it's like, oh, it can change the next day. On the flip side, let's say it changes all the time. Still not super, or I should say it doesn't change at all. That's also kind of concerning because then it's like, okay, well, then what are we doing the lessons for, right? This is kind of the unfortunate thing about swing lessons is there's kind of an incentive built into it of like, hey, I want to see you as frequently as possible. And it's like a lot of the time your child doesn't need more swing lessons. They need to learn how to score actually on the golf course. And there's just not an infrastructure for most coaches to be able to do that, right? It's like, even if they take them out of the golf course, they're going to see a few holes. What if your kid's nervous? It's just like, oh, maybe they can go caddy. It's like, okay, they can see one round of golf or 2 rounds of golf, but that doesn't tell you that much, right? We need enough data to be able to see what's going on. So like when I talk about this, I'm looking at 5 to 10 rounds of golf. It allows me to have a lot of stability in what I'm seeing. And I'm not going to go into all the statistics of it, but it's just a lot more consistent than a single round of golf or 2 rounds of golf, considering all the variables that go into that, of like a kid being nervous or what have you. So anyway, let's go ahead and dig into the details. So this is kind of the framework that I use here. And so what I really want to do here is just help you guys understand what the framework is and why each one of these things is there, right? So the first thing is statistics, right? We have to be tracking your child's statistics. The tool I use is called Draw More Circles. A big reason that I like them is because I've been able to have a lot of input in the statistics that they carry. So that's obviously been really, really impactful. I've had so many students come to me where they're using all sorts of different apps. I have not found another app that carries the statistics that I need in the same way that Circles does. And again, part of that's because when I've asked like, hey, can you carry this? And then they do like the next week, it's really amazing. And it's a great relationship there. So we need to know what's going on the golf course, right? We need to know that from a statistical perspective. Otherwise, we're going to know it from an emotional perspective. Right. And emotions, how many of you guys think that you make better decisions when you are very emotional versus how many of you guys think that you make good decisions when you're calm and looking at data. Hopefully you guys understand that you're not going to make great decisions if you're super emotional here. And so we need to have a way to pull ourselves out of whatever we experienced on the golf course, whatever we experienced in this last tournament, and say, what's the data telling us over a reasonable period of time, right? 5 to 10 rounds is my number for that. 5 gives us a short-term trend. It's where I like to start off with students. Long term, I like to be looking at 10 rounds of golf because that gives us some stability. From a statistical perspective, it means we're essentially going to have 1 or 2 good rounds and 1 or 2 bad rounds and a whole bunch of mediocre rounds. Maybe we have a great round, maybe we have a terrible round, but it kind of normalizes that. Versus if we're looking at 2 rounds, it's very easy for you to have wildly different numbers. You can just kind of think about this as like if you use a random number generator, and it was supposed to come out within a particular range. Well, you couldn't control exactly where it comes out, right? So you need to have enough flips to really be able to figure out that situation. I like to use the example of a coin because that's kind of easy for us to imagine here. It's like if I flip a coin 3 times, it comes up heads 3 times. I don't have a broken coin. I just need to flip it more times. And so that's kind of the way to look at this, right? Where it's like when we're getting started, when I'm getting started with any junior golfer, it's really about understanding their game and discovering those things rather than being like, hey, we need to do this right out the gate, right? Versus a swing coach is just kind of pigeonholed into that. It's just like, hey, I've got this problem. You're like, all right, we're going to work on that for the lesson, right? Rather than looking at the statistics and be like, I understand where you think that you have this issue. It's actually not that big of an issue, and I can show you mathematically why that's the case. And so that's what I'm doing with my students. So anyway, we need to understand what's going on actually on the golf course. Now, secondarily, some people can track the statistics, right? A lot of people won't even do that, but some people go through the effort. You might even be watching this video tracking statistics, right? And you got to learn, like, how do we break through this plateau that we're in? The next thing we have to understand is that we need to be able to tie the specific skills to the statistics, right? So each statistic, I've got other videos I want to say that go through the details. That's those statistics. Obviously, when I'm working with students, it's much more in detail, but this is for a YouTube video. So we've got the statistics that we're looking at. There are skills that need to tie to those statistics. If we're tracking a statistic and there's no skill that attaches to it, it tells us literally nothing. Like, it's useless. And so I'm not financially modeling, but like literally like mapping this out mathematically of like, okay, you hit this many greens, okay, you missed this many greens, your scrambling rate's this, therefore we hit this many greens and we should have made bogey because of this many missed greens as a result of those 2 statistics, right? We consider penalty rate, we consider 3-putt rate, we consider birdie conversion rate, we consider what I call compound errors, so stuff that kind of falls outside of that. And we're able to kind of label each one of those situations of why they're a particular problem and which skill they tie back to, right? So as an example, greens regulation is going to be a product of your different on-green percentages from your different approach numbers, right? And so that allows us to pull the tee shot away from greens regulation to say like, okay, where do we need to put our focus on the approach shots, which would be our on-green percentage, or our proximity. I like on-green percentage better because I've never seen a case where a student has really screwed up proximity numbers, but they have an amazing greens regulation. So it's a lot easier to say, let me hit it on the green comparatively to like, I need to hit this to 25 feet instead of 29 feet. Like, nobody can see the difference there. Whereas if I say you're on the green or you're not on the green, that's easy to comprehend, right? So again, when I'm working with players, it's not just, hey, let's be as mathematically precise as possible. We need to be able to actually implement it on the golf course, right? And so for me, I'm working with kids as young as 10 years old. Like, this stuff has to be simple enough for them to be able to execute on it and get results. And I'm also working with players who are like top 10 in their class, right? So there's a wide spectrum there. And so I need to be able to get consistent results across the board and kind of know, okay, here's how we can actually execute on that. But long story short, we need to be able to have these skills defined to say, well, what exactly do we need to be able to do, right? Like, with our approach shots, like, what are we trying to do? Like, we're trying to hit it close? We're trying to hit it 30 feet? We're trying to hit it on the green? We're trying to hit it somewhere? Like, we have to know, and we have to know how we're going to do that. That kind of leads us into our next thing here. So within each skill, which is a whole line of reasoning onto itself, just like what statistics tied to which skills. If you want me to go and do a deep dive on that, comment below, let me know. I'd be happy to do it. But again, this stuff gets into the weeds here, so I want to make sure that I'm at least addressing like the big picture framework here. So we've got those skills. Strategy. For each skill, we have a way that we're trying to do that. So I'll give you guys an example. If we have a high penalty rate off the tee, then that tells me that there's a few things that could potentially be wrong strategically, right? So my first question is like, all right, do we have enough room on these holes, right? Like how big is our shot pattern? How big are these holes? Are we hitting driver on holes we shouldn't be hitting driver on? That's a really easy one, right? Because if we make that adjustment and be like, and you also have to consider the rest of this. We could be an amazing driver of the golf ball. If we're hitting driver on holes we shouldn't be hitting driver on, of course we're going to have a high penalty rate. Of course that's going to be a problem, right? It's not a, hey, let's go fix your golf swing issue. Versus for most coaches, it's going to be like, well, you got this really high penalty rate. If you even track the statistics, you're like, oh, we got to work on driver. It's like, maybe, but maybe you just got to look at like being a little bit more strategic off the tee. There's no way for you to see that if you don't kind of have this preset framework and the statistics actually look at it, right? So we got that. Then we're looking at that and saying, okay, cool. Are we hitting one shot shape? Like, are we trying to work the ball both ways? Are we trying to tell ourselves that we can hit the ball straight, right? If we know our shot pattern is a certain size, it's so funny to me because like a lot of coaches like their players hit it relatively straight because it looks good on Instagram. And on the golf course, it's just not going to perform overly well. And it's like you watch the guys on tour, the girls on tour, girls can hit it relatively straight. These are not moving the ball quite as fast. But a lot of the best players on tour, you see a little bit of movement on their golf ball off the tee. It's not like they're just moving the ball 2 yards every time. It's like you see 10, 15, 20 yards curve on kind of like their stock ball off the tee where they're hammered down the left side, the right side, rough, and then having it come back some amount. Obviously, there's extremes to that in either direction, but nevertheless, that's one of the things that I see really consistently at that highest level, because what it allows us to have is if we know our shot pattern, then we kind of understand the left side of our shot pattern and the right side of our shot pattern. Let's say, for example, we're hitting a fade. Well, if I pull it, I know that's the left side of my shot pattern, right? And I can see that visually off the tee and be like, okay, that's the furthest left I could possibly go. Okay, because of that, here's my alignment. So it leaves a little bit of room for a pull. And then I know I want to hit a fade. So I've got that much room over to the right before I'm out on the right. And so it allows me to say, like, all right, cool, let's just rip it. And as long as I don't hit some snap hook or some crazy flare, I'm going to be somewhere in that 70-yard-ish pattern, and I'll be good to go. Like, it's not a problem. I just hammer driver, right? And then get really good at that alignment, right? So if we're trying to work the ball in both directions, that's obviously going to crush us as far as penalty rate, right? If we don't have an awareness of that, that's obviously going to be a problem, right? So that's just strategically what we're trying to do. Trying to hit one shot shape, trying to make sure that we've got the correct club off the tee. Then we can kind of go into the next level, right? We can know we need to do that. Are we sold on it, right? Because I could tell you, hey, like, you got 70 yards of hazard. This is what you should do. And then have a junior golfer not do it and do some other thing, right? And so then that becomes like a mindset question, right? A lot of people think that mindset is this thing of like, I need to believe that I'm going to hit these amazing shots all the time, which is just a lie. Like, it's just not true. Like, if you know your let's say your proximity is 30 feet on an approach shot. Well, if you have a perfect target, which means the target is in the middle of your shot pattern, then that means you have a 60-foot dispersion pattern, right? Which is whatever, 20 yards. Okay. So if the pin just happens to be on the left side there, you just get unlucky, it shouldn't be surprising to you that occasionally you're going to have like a 60-footer, right? It's just like, if you know your average proximity is 30, sometimes you're inside of that, sometimes you're outside of that. Let's just call it like 50-50. Like, you're going to have 60-footers sometimes. That's not something to freak out about. It's just like, oh yeah, it's just like, it's what it is. When you have 45 feet, it's not like, hey, let's get all pissed off about it, or thinking, hey, I can hit it to 5 feet intentionally. It's just like, hit your shot pattern, hit it on the green somewhere, and go on to the next hole. Like, make your pawn go to the next hole. So it's how sold are we? And how good are we at getting ourselves to do that? Because we could say, hey, I am sold on that, but my body doesn't believe, right? Like, physically, maybe I'm like shaking or something like that, right? There can be different reasons and different ways that we can get out of that. And that has its own set of things that we can do. But long story short, within mindset, we need to understand, like, how sold are we on doing whatever the strategy is. If we don't know what the strategy is, we're cooked, right? We've got to know what the strategy is, right? So we can do nothing else. It's one of the reasons I think Decade is so great, because it does really get at this, and strategy does, in a certain way, come first, aside from statistics and understanding those skills. I think that's more essential, but strategy becomes the first real leverage point. And that's kind of the way I'm thinking about this, like different leverage points. Once we have that, and we're sold on it, right? There's a bunch of different things we could go into there, but we're sold. We could be sold and understand that it's the right thing to do and have no ability to execute on it because we never practice it, right? Like, if I say, hey, I haven't played golf in months, I'm going to go out there. I know what I'm trying to do. I'm sold that I need to do it, but I just have no ability to do it because I haven't practiced it. This is if I went out there and hit 10 balls, like I might have some sense where my golf ball is going to go, right? And be able to adjust accordingly. But if I don't have that, then there's nothing I can do, right? And so this is one of the areas where I think a lot of players and coaches have this backwards, where it's like we're starting with mechanics and then working our way from there. Like you could almost say that most junior golfers follow the reverse of this. It's like a lot of the time we start mechanics and we're like, oh, we got to go practice. And then, if that's not working, then we have a mindset problem. And then like, oh, maybe we should learn some strategy. And then, maybe like skill development or something, or like maybe track statistics, but we don't really know what we're doing with that. Like it's backwards. Whereas we go through this, linearly, it's like everything is logical. Everything actually makes sense of just like, well, what's going on? Okay, cool. Well, like what am I supposed to do in order to improve that? I'm like, okay, cool. Well, how do I improve that particular skill? Like how do I do a better job of hitting the ball on the green or not having penalties or whatever, et cetera, right? So at that point, we can say, hey, if I haven't worked on it at all, I don't need to go fix my mechanics. I need to go put in some time on the thing, right? And then that I should improve just on that alone, right? If I haven't done any of these things, right? If I just implement one of these things, we're going to see really fast results. And the higher up on this I go, the faster results are going to be, right? If I make a strategic adjustment, those are instant, right? If I say, hey, lay up to this number instead of that number, we'll get the shots right away. Mindset. Usually going to get carried along by strategy. Can sometimes be an issue. But again, like that's just a mental like shift, like think differently. Maybe it takes some reps, but again, just think differently. It's not that crazy. Practice, a little bit more difficult. Takes a little bit more time. But in theory, it's like if you don't have a shot, you get 10 balls to figure it out. It's like, you should have it figured out. And anyone who pushes back on that, I would just say, hey, you know how when you hit an approach shot and it sucks, you just drop another ball and you fix it on the second ball every single time? What if I gave you 10 of those? Like, you think you could figure out how to hit that shot? I think so. Especially if you're looking at the outcome of the shot, not whatever mechanics you're working on. Okay. So that's kind of the order of things. Now, mechanics. I am not demonizing mechanics. I'm not saying mechanics are bad. I'm saying they need to be in their proper place. You go out there, you work on it. You've been working on it for an extended period of time. You're sold. You know what you're supposed to do off the tee. You're sold on that mentally. You're practicing it. You just can't get it. There's a ceiling on how much better you can get. And so this doesn't happen instantly. It's like if you don't ever practice, you practice a little bit, you're probably going to get better at it almost right away. So that's why when I'm working with students, I'm able to get them pretty fast results, because if we're applying this framework appropriately, we're going to be able to get results pretty quick. Like, because if we have a situation where we're not working on something at all, or not applying the right strategy or mindset or whatever, and obviously there's a lot more nuances to this stuff, and I've already gone over here. If we're not doing that, and then I get us to do that, we're doing infinitely more than we were prior. So there's a high probability that we're going to get some amount of results for essentially no risk, right? If you think about each one of these, like there's no real risk in any of these. Mechanics is the only one of these that intrinsically carries risk. Is saying, hey, I guess I should know before I go into mechanics. There's also an element of practice of how often you should be on the driving range versus on the golf course, right? So that's worth noting. I am not a fan of endless driving range sessions or lots of back-to-back driving range sessions, but that's a whole other topic. Mechanics. We can do something on the driving range for an extended period of time and not be able to improve above a particular ceiling, right? When we get started at golf, we can hit a golf ball. Eventually we get decent enough, right? That's kind of how we can see this. Eventually we hit a ceiling. The question is, multifold here. Number one, do we need to improve that skill? Is that skill the highest leverage point that we could look at, right? So I could say, hey, I'd like to get XYZ skill developed, but something else is more important. I don't need to put the brain power into that thing yet. I need to focus on that other thing, right? We do not want to have division of focus. We want to have 100% of our focus go into the main thing we're trying to develop. Everything else is just put on the burner, right? I'm not saying don't practice it. I'm saying don't put brain power into it, right? It's a really important distinction to make. And it's something that's really challenging to do, honestly. But something like that, in my opinion, is much more correlated with mindset than whatever woo-woo breathing stuff. Anyway, when we are looking at that and we're saying, okay, cool, I need to make this easier for myself. That's when we look at mechanics, right? I'm trying to hit a fade. I'm trying to aim down the left side. I'm trying to see that ball cut, but I'm hitting snap hooks, right? Like I'm doing everything I can to hang on to the face, hitting snap hooks. That's when mechanics makes a lot of sense. That's when we want to go ahead and make adjustments to the mechanics to say, why can we not get the face open to the path? or whatever the particular case is, right? Even within mechanics, we need to think about this from the exact same perspective, right? So there's a subset within mechanics that becomes strategy, right? And so the reason I say that is within mechanics, one thing that I would call relatively strategy related is alignment and just how we're visualizing the shot. If we don't understand that and we're aiming straight comparatively to adding a little bit of angle for whatever shot shape that we're hitting, we're going to have a bad time. If we're not sold on that mentally, we're going to have a bad time. If we don't practice that in a way where we're consistently seeing the same target. If we're hitting a fade, target's out in front of us. If we're hitting a draw, target's over our shoulder, right? So we have to be able to be aware of those things before we can even talk about like something as basic as like your grip, right? And a lot of the times just, I don't see that talked about, right? Like those little things go a long way. And so are those things like super sexy to talk about? No, not really, but they're important and they cause players to score better. And I support that by just having seen a tremendous amount of data on this. So when we're looking at those mechanics, again, we're looking at it from the perspective, okay, the ball flight's doing this, we don't like that. Now we can start asking why. And so that's really what we want to be doing is just like work backwards from the ball flight and ask why. It's like, why is the ball flight not doing what we want to do? And then almost inevitably, in most cases, it's going to trace back to how the club face is oriented relative to the path, right? So club face relative to path is going to give a shot shape, right? Then there's also relation to tilts, right, within our golf swing, right? So being able to rotate effectively, being able to change where our pressure is exactly, to be able to control low point and things of that nature. A little bit of ball position, understanding our arc on our, as we swing a golf club, right? A lot of junior golfers don't understand that if you hit up on a driver, it's going to take your path more left, right? And so they're like, well, I can draw my irons, but I can't draw my driver. Like, what do I do about that? It's like, there are ways to solve that, right? Or we could just accept it, right? But just understanding why those things are the case are really important, just from a strategic perspective. Like we can go into some details about like, oh, I want you to do this different thing with your wrists or what have you. But it's just understanding that stuff. And it's solving the mechanics to the degree that we're understanding two things. Number one, we understand what we're trying to solve and what we should be able to see in the ball flight, right? So it's not just, hey, I'm going to fix your golf swing and work on some arbitrary stuff. We're hitting snap hooks. We want to stop hitting snap hooks, right? And so sometimes there's going to be one change, right? Sometimes there's like grip or whatever. Sometimes there's going to be two changes or multiple changes that need to happen at the same time in order to get a particular outcome. In which case you can still have that connected to the ball flight because you can say, well, if you do this without doing this, then this is what's going to happen. But if you do this and this, then this is what's going to happen. If you overdo it, this is what's going to happen, right? And so you're going to start to see this pattern with your ball flight that's going to tell the junior golfer where they need to focus, what they're actually doing well without always going back and looking at camera. The purpose of camera and filming, right? Good camera angles. I'm amazed at how many. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm amazed at like camera angles, guys. Camera angles are important. Slow motion with good lighting so we can see everything that's going on. From that perspective, we're looking at this and saying, okay, cool. We're looking at that when we don't know what's going on. We don't know why it's happening. We don't just look at our swing to try and clean up and polish what it looks like. We look at our swing because we've hit a true roadblock. Statistically, we know what we're doing strategically. We know we're doing the right stuff mentally. We know that we're putting in the work. And there's some issue in the mechanics, and we don't have a clue what it is, so we have to look. Once we have that, then we can see, okay, am I getting the ball flight that I want? If we are, congratulations. We can just leave it there. We don't need to be in this chase for the holy grail of the perfect golf swing. There are some of the best looking golf swings on tour. Don't win that much money. There are some ugly looking golf swings that won a bunch of money, right? So we always want to be looking at through the perspective of, I want the result, which is ultimately, I want the statistic to change, which ultimately drives the score, right? I want the skill to develop that changes the statistic, that changes the score. And I want to go as far down this as I need to. If I can just go to strategy to improve the skill, to improve the statistic, to impact the score, I'm just going to stick with strategy. I'm going to keep it easy. If I have to go all the way down here, fine. But I still have to go back up that ladder to get back to scores. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully this video is helpful for you. Understand how this framework works. If this is something that you want more help with for your child, got an application below you can fill out. Just make sure your child's in a spot where I can I can help them. They're putting enough in. And if you're interested in that and you want to kind of like walk you through that, you'll be able to schedule a call, go over it together, make sure it's a good fit for your child, and we can go from there. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed this video. There's plenty of other videos on the channel going through all the little details of stuff I talked about today, practice, statistics, tournament selection, all that stuff. If you want to go ahead and check out one of those videos, go ahead and do that. Leave this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one.